Ghost Towns with Mike Roberts and Bill Barlee.
Welcome to Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. I'm Mike Roberts, and Bill Barlee is with me. He's our resident tour guide for ghost towns of the Pacific Northwest, BC, and the Yukon. And today we're going to be talking about a place which is in the southern part of British Columbia. And Bill, where precisely is Granite Creek?
Well, it's just east of the Coast Range, and it's in that old Tulameen, Similkameen region of British Columbia, which is steeped in placer gold history and mining history generally.
Now, what were they looking for here? Placer indicates gold. Is that what was at Granite Creek?
Originally, they were looking for gold, but they found a bonus, Mike. They found platinum as well.
And there are treasure stories, I would presume, with all there seems to be in all these places.
A couple of fascinating stories.
And some remarkable characters that you've heard of from other parts of British Columbia's history. We'll be talking about Granite Creek, Granite City, right after we come back from this break. Welcome back to Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. Bill Barlee here, and we're talking about Granite Creek, Granite City. But before we got to there, really, what route did the people who were coming this way take?
Okay, most of the American miners, 1858, came up the Columbia, then branched onto the Okanagan, and then took another tributary of the Okanagan. That was the Similkameen. And they made their way up the Similkameen, and at Princeton, which was then called Vermilion Forks, they took the North Fork, which was called the Rouge or the Red. And this is now called the Tulameen.
And it looks like rough country.
It is quite rough country, and this photograph here indicates what the Tulameen looks like today. The river cutting through the center, cliffs on either side, and it stays in this very hilly, cliffy country for many, many miles, Mike.
The Chinese mined this area, but this is the interesting little twist. What we're really looking at here is one of the early whites who came into the country. Who is the fellow on the lead horse on the bridge?
Probably that's Johnny Chance. And Johnny Chance was a sometimes rustler, sometimes bad man from the United States, whose name probably wasn't really Chance, came into this area in 1885, 25 years after the Chinese had been mining the river, and discovered a creek that they were not mining, and it was called Granite Creek.
Now, we have here a yoke. This would be used by a human being.
This is a man yoke, yeah.
And you can see it's got a little padding on the shoulders, I guess, to make it a little more comfortable for him. What did he use the yoke for? And who used the yoke?
The yoke was used by the Chinese, and they would be carrying, because in certain areas, if they're working on a bench, they had to carry the gravel to water. So they would actually take that yoke, put it over their shoulders.
Give us a demonstration.
Well, like so. And that's why it's padded here, Mike. This is padding, so it'll be easier on the neck of the individual. Put it over their neck like this. There would be another equivalent of this on the other side. A bucket would hang here, another bucket would hang here, so they'd counterbalance, and they would carry their pay dirt to water. And this is a very laborious process, but the pay dirt in that river was extremely good.
Now, the Chinese mined throughout this whole area. Why didn't they mine on Granite Creek?
Well, there are several theories. My theory is that they mined all the other creeks in the area. There's no doubt about that. When the white miners came in 1885, they found Slate Creek had been worked, and Boulder Creek, and Eagle Creek, and Bear Creek, and Champion Creek, and Collins Gulch. All of them had been worked except for Granite. And the probable reason is the Chinese, I think, probably had prospected Granite Creek. But Granite Creek is sensitive to very, very high water, especially because it comes down a narrow draw. So if it rains in the upper part of Granite Creek, that creek comes up very quickly. And if a Chinese had been caught there, one of the prospectors, he probably would have been drowned. I think that one of the Chinese, there was a fatality, a Chinese fatality on Granite Creek. They walked away from the creek because the creek they considered was Badwa.
Badwa?
Yes, it was evil spirits, and the Chinese were kind of prone to shy away from creeks.
Gold wasn't enough to lure them past that again?
Evidently not then.
That would have to be one of the only explanations, because being in that country, it's certainly accessible. There's no mystery about it. It would normally be explored.
And it's the major tributary of the Tulameen beyond Princeton.
All right. Let's take a look at some of the other old photographs we've got of this particular region, because there's really such a tremendous story to this. This is a really old shot, and developed about the, 1885, 1890,
yes,
something
it's been probably early 1890s. Shows Granite Creek on the right-hand side, and It's typical of one of the early mining towns of British Columbia, log cabin structure and so on. And this shows some detail of the town itself. This was probably taken about 1895, shows the Caribou Hotel, or the Caribou House, and this is one of 3 or 4 hotels in Granite City at the time.
It wasn't really a city. That was just a name it was given. It was never actually gazetted as a city.
No, because it didn't last that long, Mike, but you must realize that Granite at this time was the 5th largest city in British Columbia.
They really packed them in. This is a bit overexposed shot, but if you watch for roof lines and stuff, there are buildings just piled into this little valley.
Sure, 2 main streets in Granite, and there were over 1,000 people here at the height of the rush, which was 1885 and into 1886.
The workings, this pit, there are all sorts of things that you can learn from a shot like this. What's the man got suspended from that tree overhead? Do you know what is being shown in this shot?
Well, the shot itself is not as distinct as it should be, but it shows that they have about 25 feet of overburden here, and they have to lift some of those rocks, so the tripod's in here. There's also a car for carrying out some of the...
That's the wood rail line.
The pay gravel, right. And they would be dumping that into a sluice box and then running the gravel down through the sluice to recover both platinum and gold.
Look at the size of the rocks that they're... I mean, these are real river boulders that are there.
Yeah, this is an old run, you can tell by the size of the boulders. Not unusual in the Tulameen country.
Must have been tough country to work.
Oh, yeah, this is another shot. This is of Granite Creek itself, probably 1890s. And here they flumed part of the creek away. They've got a dam up there, and... this is typical of the operations to tap the bedrock on the bottom of the creek, some of which they could reach, Mike, and some of which they could not.
The abacus, again, the Chinese used this extensively.
Yeah, they did.
Now, this is a place where a minor treasure event comes into play.
Yeah, there's rather an interesting story here, and the story is this, is that in the 1890s and early in the 1880s, both the Chinese kept their platinum. The white men were inclined to throw it away. And in the late 1880s, a miner called Johansen came into this country and came across a very, very good patch of ground. But in so doing, he picked up a lot of what we call white man's gold or poor man's gold, and it was platinum, unknown to him. They were getting 25 cents a pound. Well, he didn't think 25 cents a pound was good enough, so he stashed all his platinum, several hundred ounces, in an old bucket, in a pail. And in 1895, he heard of another rush in the Kootenays, hard rock rush. He left Granite Creek, but before doing so, he hid or cached the bucket somewhere within sight of his cabin door. And now what happened to him in the Kootenays, we don't know, but he never returned to Granite. And so somewhere within the site of Johansen's old cabin, which no longer stands, because there are only half a dozen buildings left in Granite City, or Granite Creek, is the old platinum cache. And there's no doubt that this did occur because there have been several other minor caches of platinum found in the region, right from Britton Creek right down. The
theory being that if it was heavy enough to be like gold, it probably should be kept because it might be worth something somewhere.
That's right. It was a noble metal, and it was almost the same specific gravity as gold, and but he never did return.
So what's platinum go for an ounce these days?
Well, the platinum there is about 72% pure, so they'd probably only get a little over $600 an ounce at the present time in Canadian funds. So that would be worth probably, if there's 300 ounces there, would be very close to $200,000 in the old bucket, if somebody hasn't already picked it up.
That's the thing. I mean, we know, we've heard the legend, and of course nobody would say, I've got the cache.
Not too many, probably.
All right. Then there have been other caches. There could still be more.
Yeah, there could be indeed.
Okay, and they're still mining platinum out of the area.
Definitely.
These characters, now the people of the time, you mentioned Johnny Chance already, but some of the businessmen of the time are pictured in this shot. The man on the left's got some woolly chaps.
Yep.
They all look like pretty rakish types, except for the portly guy third from the left.
Yeah, this is almost certainly Edgar Dewdney, who was one of the original builders of the Dewdney Trail, along with Moberly. And he had mining interests in the Similkameen region, and they are standing. This shot is probably taken very close to Princeton itself, which is right on at the confluence of the Similkameen and the Tulameen.
Now, the name Dewdney, you've already mentioned the Dewdney Trail. Is he the contractor who built it?
Yes, he's one of the two.
And Walter Moberly was his partner?
That's correct.
Did they make lots of money on that? Was that like a crown corporation today?
It really set the scene for Dewdney's later successes in life. He became quite well known, one of the most well known of the British Columbians.
Okay. There, a man who went in the 60s to look for some treasure. I mean,
Sure.
just down on his luck. And you're in there right now, and this shot shows you how much gold can be obtained out of this neck of the woods right now. How much is there?
Well, 3 pounds, 1/2 ounce of gold and platinum. The platinum doesn't show. That's 1 day.
3 pounds, 1/2 ounce of gold in 1 day.
Yes, gold and platinum in 1 day. And that's we're just down from Granite Creek, a couple of miles downriver on the Tulameen from Granite Creek, on an old bench that the Chinese knew about. And there's an old back channel on the bench, which is, by the way, very difficult mining, Mike, but fascinating area to, because when you come across an old tertiary channel, you know that you're in an original run.
What's 3 pounds of gold worth?
Well,
I mean, this is
gold is weighed in troy weight, so
Yeah.
each ounce is, there are 12 ounces to the pound, but each ounce is more than a avoirdupois or a standard ounce, so that a 1 pound of troy weight is a little over 14 ounces of standard weight.
money. How much?
Well, about a little over $20,000, 21 or 22,000.
And this was all is still being mined after all these other people have already gone through.
Yes, but you must realize that the easy part of the river has been done. The Chinese gleaned and were the best miners in the business, Mike, so that when they went over the river, they wing dammed a lot of the Tulameen, which is a shallow river.
Wing dam.
Wing dammed it. They put a dam out and then worked behind in the slack water behind the dam, then put another dam just down, and do that with rocks, working their way down the river on both sides of the river.
Yeah.
But most of the old gold channel seems to come on the south side. There seems to be an old ancient channel coming down the south side of the Tulameen from about Granite Creek right down to Princeton, and it's indicated in 3 or 4 different spots there.
Is it all staked? I mean, you've obviously staked it in order to have your mining operation work. And
The river is essentially staked from Princeton right up to Champion Creek, which is about as far as the gold goes. Although a few people have claims beyond that, they're not in the real gold area.
is it sort of anomalies or unusual deposits, or do you think that there's some substance left there? Obviously, I wouldn't call 3 pounds of gold not substantial, but is that just an unusual little pocket?
No, out of that particular area, there are about 518 ounces, and near as we can tell, came out of a space about 50 feet by 42, which is very, very rich by today's standards. Bonanza ground by old standards, but not rich bonanza ground like they had in the Yukon.
Why wasn't it found? I mean, is it just too hard? Because you were telling me that you found a boulder in there just as big as our room here.
Yeah, we found several boulders that weigh 20, 30, 40 tons, and that was part of it. There's a lot of overburden on it, Mike, and the channel is deep. It's down to 50-odd feet, and, of course, we have water problems there, too. You're down actually below the level of the river in certain parts of that channel.
So there's still gold, but it's getting harder and harder to get your hands on all the time.
Yeah, it's difficult to mine now. The easy mining is gone, and now it becomes a very, very hazardous operation.
Well,
But,
how do you pick your way through river boulders that weigh a couple of 100 pounds apiece, and there are thousands of them?
Well, you usually use a hoe, and the hoe just takes the boulders out of there, and then you work right down to bedrock itself. And in this country, practically all the gold and platinum is right on bedrock.
Some of the stories of Granite Creek. And next week on Gold Trails and Ghost Towns, we're going to visit another part of the country Bill knows well, Camp McKinney. See you next time on Gold Trails.